All right, so we are recording. Hello, hi from Paul. I see Mary, Kim. Hi guys, hi everybody. Fantastic, hearing me well. Okay, great. So one of the things I'm gonna do just to start out is so I know who I'm talking to, I wanna go ahead and share a quick poll. It's 2 questions long and find out where you guys are at essentially. How are you currently managing your inventory, and have you been affected by the IPI threshold change? We're going to talk about these 2 topics, which I am very much interested in and have a lot of data about. All right, I'm getting some answers. Excel, in my head, seller board. All right, and then yes, got a couple of you guys affected by the IPI threshold change. All right. Yeah, that was, I like to call that a sucker punch that Amazon threw out to us. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. It looks like just get your last answers in. Otherwise, I'm gonna close the poll. I know we've got a couple of people left who might be adding their answers. All right, but mostly I'm seeing we've got some people who do their inventory management in their head or on Excel, very common. And then seller board is one of the other ones. And the majority of people on the call are affected by the IPI change and or not sure. Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for that. And I'm gonna go ahead and get going. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up my slides here. All right, we've got bear with me one second. Having a hard time finding it. All right, let's do it this way. There they are. Okay, fantastic. Let me know if you can see those slides. All right. Okay, good. And if you have any questions, be sure to type them in the chat. I will, if they're relevant for what we're talking about, I will answer them right away. If they're not, then I'm going to take more questions at the end. All right, so we are talking, oh, okay. I'll have to have my tech look into that, Victor, thanks. Okay, so we're talking about the Amazon IPI change, right? So I'm just gonna give you a little bit of data on myself. I have been an Amazon seller since 2014. And I started in 2017, I started talking a lot about copywriting. I became a copywriting expert on Amazon, specifically for Amazon. There's a specific way that you should be communicating to your customers on Amazon. And that's kind of one of the ways that I started getting onto podcasts, started getting into speaking on stage. I was on the AMPM podcast, was on the seller at the Amazing Summit, also known as SellerCon, and some various other things. And so throughout this process, about that same time, I started having trouble with my inventory management. Actually, I'd been having trouble, and it got to the point where I was just completely done with all of the challenges. And things like my entire inventory being stranded. I missed the cutoff date. My entire inventory was stranded at Amazon. They had lost my inventory until after Christmas, very conveniently. Lots of money lost there. Running out of inventory for a month at a time, here and there. Over ordering on products and paying thousands in storage fees, loan interest, and you know, just carrying way too much inventory. So having my capital tied up in all of that, you know, stunting the growth because it took the money that I could be investing in other products and was stuck in inventory. One of the worst things to do is to have your money stuck in inventory. It really hurts your ability to scale a business. Comment in the chat if any of this sounds familiar to you, if you've had difficulties with any of this inventory management stuff. All right, so essentially I needed a solution, and the softwares I was trying weren't really working for me, so I ended up kind of going on a mission to figure out this inventory management piece. I have basically spent the last 2 years eating, sleeping, and breathing Amazon inventory management. So as part of that process, I've looked at a lot of the different softwares. I've looked at a lot of the different systems. I've talked to, at this point now, hundreds of 7- and 8-figure business owners, and crowdsourced a lot of information on what works, what doesn't. Noticed a lot of patterns that sellers were running into, they thought problems for scaling or for running their business, but they ended up being were inventory management problems that were hurting cash flow. So we took kind of the best of what we had learned and put it into a software. So that's kind of where I get my background in inventory management. I'd come from I've done bookkeeping and accounting. Numbers has always been very interesting to me. So inventory management, was kind of a very easy thing for me to kind of wrap my head around. So why don't we go ahead and talk about the Amazon IPI bomb. So, one of the things that happened recently, of course, we're all getting over COVID, and essentially Amazon drops this bomb, as you probably are aware of. They changed their inventory performance index threshold from 400 to 500. So that's the subject of what we're going to be talking about now, and just kind of trying to rethink how to think of your inventory management to help to get your score to improve, because we're at the point where if your score is what it is, there was a point at which you could try to get it to improve, but that point has passed. I think it was the 16th of August. So if you have a score that's less than 500, and this is something that someone said that they weren't sure if they were affected, one of the ways you can do it is you can go and look into your inventory dashboard and look at your inventory performance and see what your score is. It's listed right on your Seller Central account, and it will let you know if your score is under 500, then you're going to have some restriction problems. Okay, so like we talked about, you're going to be restricted. So we're going to talk about what are the things that you can do so that this doesn't continue to affect your business, right? So if you're being affected right now, we want to kind of move you out of your score being so affected that you will have this problem when they do this again, right? And we don't know if they're going to raise it, because it was at one time 350, then it became 400, and now it's 500, which is a huge leap. And it was basically a slap in the face. It was Amazon created these guidelines and these rules around COVID that disallowed you from sending in inventory either at all or sending in as much inventory as you needed to be sending. And so there were stockouts, and stockouts very heavily weigh on your score. And then they turn around and pass this inventory threshold increase, which then put a bunch of sellers into the category of being restricted in their inventory. All right, so what is an IPI score? So the IPI score stands for your Inventory Performance Index, and it is how Amazon calculates how good you are at maintaining an acceptable balance in your inventory levels. We're going to talk about what makes up the Inventory Performance Index. There are 4 points that make up the Inventory Performance Index, and what you can maybe do to kind of change the way that you're operating so that you can get better at that, so that Amazon will increase your score. So that's kind of the idea. It's by the end of the year, even though they say that it's going to revert by the end of the year and those restrictions will lift, we don't really know exactly how much. We don't really know that it's going to go, completely back to normal. We don't really, we want to be as prepared as possible so that Amazon can't penalize us and really throw a wrench into our businesses, which is what is happening to a lot of people. Okay, so the influencing factors. So working on these factors will help you to improve your score, but they'll also help you to save money and to avoid losing sales. There are several different ways you can lose money on poor inventory planning. You know, you can over order, you can overstock, and you're paying storage fees. You can run out of inventory, which is another influencing factor, and lose sales, but you're also losing out on the additional, you know, cash flow that you're getting. You know, there are various different things that can happen. And we want to build a structure so that that's not happening. And I think honestly, a big part of that is not fully relying on Amazon as a warehouse. And I think that's kind of what they're saying, is they're pushing us in the direction of not fully relying on them as our only warehouse. And it's unfortunate because then you have, you know, the warehousing fees, but with essentially they've been increasing their fees as one measure to try to get you to get out of their warehouse. And now they're increasing their IPI score as another way of trying to get you into using a third-party warehouse. So everything is pointing, all signs point to Amazon really does not any longer want to be a holding ground for slow-moving products. All right, so here are the 4 influencing factors. Stranded inventory, excess inventory, sell-through, right, which means how quickly you're selling through the inventory that you send into Amazon, and in-stock inventory. So we're going to talk about all of these points and how you can set up systems to do better with them. All right, so what do you do with this? All right. So we're going to talk about the path to improving your IPI. All right, we have stranded inventory. So stranded inventory is the first one. So that's the easiest thing to handle. I'm just going to get a little bit of water here. The easiest thing to handle is your stranded inventory most times, right? Amazon can be a little bit annoying because, you know, I had a couple of units of stranded inventory for one product, and if you have to keep an eye on it because they'll give you solutions for how to fix stranded inventory. And what stranded inventory is, and especially, it's something to especially watch if you're selling wholesale, because what it is essentially your listing becomes inactive, or your inventory gets disconnected from a listing, right? So sometimes that can happen for wholesalers when they're not allowed to sell that product, or that listing, something happens to that listing, the listing gets shut down. That inventory then is kind of disconnected from that listing. So you have to go and connect it back up, and basically, you know, let Amazon be able to sell it. Because if you've got inventory and Amazon can't sell it, then it's going to just sit there and nothing's going to happen to it. So Amazon doesn't really like that. So especially if you have a wholesale, that should be something that's built into your system on a weekly basis, is to look for stranded inventory. And if you know, also retail arbitrage, if someone's doing retail arbitrage, maybe you're doing, you know, some things and you're doing retail arbitrage on the side, that's something to keep an eye on. You know, the retail arbitrage might be a side business or a side thing that you just happen to kind of throw in there. But stranded inventory can happen a lot with retail arbitrage, because you send something in and then the brand owner says, nope, I don't want you to sell this. And then it gets disconnected, but the inventory stays there. So you have to ship that back to yourself. So keep a system in place if you are doing retail arbitrage on the side, or you are doing something where you have stranded inventory that consistently can occur. Keep in mind that you need to keep an eye on that and either be able to reconnect it to a listing or pull it from Amazon, so that it doesn't, you know, consistently affect your score. And it's not going to, you know, unless you have a lot, it's not going to be a huge factor, but it is one of the factors. All right, so excess inventory. So starting on July 14th, Amazon was offering removal orders for free. That's not happening anymore, but that would be one of the best ways to handle excess inventory overstocked inventory that's currently in your warehouse is to pull it. You're gonna have to pay the fees now if you haven't already done that. What they'll usually do, just so that you're aware for next time, is they'll usually, at a certain point in the year, allow for a waiving of removal fees as they're getting ready for the holiday. So that's something that tends to be expected on an annual basis. So if you have, you know, a product that didn't do well, sometimes, you know, it makes sense to wait for the removal fees if it's significant. But sometimes, you know, if you see your score is not doing well, it might make sense to pay the removal fees to remove it. So that might be something that you would want to do. Just depends. The fees are usually about, I think it's 50 cents to remove and ship back to you. And it's 30 cents to actually just destroy it. So that's recent as of a few months ago. I think in May is the last time that I checked on that. So you'll have to check. Amazon's good at, you know, being able to tell you their fees. And so you should be able to figure that out. And basically, you know, you just take the number of units and you multiply it by either 50 if you're shipping it back, 50 cents, or 30 cents. All right, so that's one solution. The other solution is just not to send in as much inventory, right? Many people have had the solution to just send everything to Amazon, right? And now that starts to kind of hurt your account at this point. Getting a third-party warehouse and a fulfillment center is a very smart idea right now. And someone actually brought up a very good point on one of my last videos, to have someone on to do a call about 3PL fulfillment and talk about fees and things like that. So I definitely advise you setting up a third-party warehouse and at least knowing or having an option for fulfillment, because Amazon's check-in times are very slow. So you at least want to know that not to send all of your inventory into Amazon, but have another option, right, for distribution. Because even if Amazon's your only sales channel, it should not be your only distribution channel, right? You should not be scrambling to figure out how to get your inventory. And it was like the time during Christmas when I sent all my inventory into Amazon and they lost it until after Christmas, and I had no other distribution channel and they had all my inventory. So that's a lesson to learn from, is that you should always, you know, if you see that there's slow check-in times, don't send all of your inventory in at once. You know, we are still seeing slow check-in times. You know, I sent a shipment in and it arrived 6 days ago. This particular portion of it was 400 units, only 100 checked in, and it's been 6 days and the other 300 haven't. They've been checked in, but they haven't been received and checked into processing. So setting up a third-party warehouse and also at least having a fulfillment center makes a lot of sense, especially now with all the craziness that's going on and the way that Amazon feels about us putting all of our inventory into their warehouses. Now, I'm gonna say, when you're looking for a third-party fulfillment center, and I can, if you guys are interested, I can mention some at the end. So let me know if you would like a mention of a couple of different fulfillment centers or 3PLs. But just a real quick tip on fees. You wanna find out about fees, right? Don't just don't just ask them what does it cost for pallet storage, because it can really start to add up if they charge, you know, labeling fees, they charge pulling fees, really just pulling the cartons off of, you know, out of storage. You know, you'll see with simply just one, you know, one processing of a shipment, labeling fees, pulling fees, labor fees at 1 hour, even if it takes 20 minutes, they, you know, ask them, do you charge in increments of hours, or do you charge 1 hour even if I have, you know, 20 units sent in? Do you charge a $40 an hour for that 1 hour? You just get the data on how do their fees work? What are they going to charge you for? Do they have a monthly fee? If you don't hit the minimum, are they going to charge you a flat rate? Right? So those are all questions to ask. In fulfillment, you know, start asking about, one of the good things to do is to actually ship your stuff in and see how much it costs. Because it might make more sense to stock out. Unfortunately, you know, financially and profitably, it might make more sense to stock out than to ship it. We had a product that when Amazon ships it, you know, they pay the shipping and we pay the fulfillment costs, the fulfillment fees. But then we went to Walmart and it cost more to ship it via USPS than it actually did to sell it. So we were actually losing money, so we couldn't sell that product. So it's important to ship your stuff and test it and see how much is it going to cost you to, and does it make sense to even do fulfillment. Some people, it doesn't make sense. They have no profit, right? But having this as a backup plan is extremely important. And I think it's extremely important to not send everything to Amazon at once. You know, even if financially makes more sense, if your stuff gets hung up and doesn't get checked in, you know, you can get into some trouble. Yeah, product, yeah, Greg says we had a product block, that inventory became stranded. Yeah, exactly. So if your listing gets blocked, if your listing gets suspended, you'll have stranded inventory, right? So you either need to unblock it, fix what's going on, and then from that point, then the idea would be, you know, to reconnect it, or you need to pull it if you can't unblock the listing. All right, having good data. Okay, having good data is really important. So this is really important for this whole idea around excess inventory, and also the one that we're going to get to next is, which is sell-through, right? Really needing to have good data. And that kind of breaks down into a couple of things. So I wanted to kind of jump into the software to show how we look at data. And if you're using Excel, this is something that can be done in Excel. You know, everything is more time consuming, but just to kind of support that, we had an algorithm, and don't let software companies trick you into thinking that you have to have a really smart algorithm and the algorithm is smarter than you are. And, you know, if you can't understand the algorithm and you can't figure out what is going on, like it's math, guys. So it kind of gets into a little bit of, you know, you get into like a little bit of issues, and you need to understand, you know, why you're being recommended, what you're being recommended whenever you're using software. And with SoStocked, we, you know, kind of to support, you can do this in Excel too. We went back to basics, and we kind of adopted some of the reasons people quit softwares and went back to Excel, and that everything is understandable, everything is, you know, customizable. And so let me go ahead and do a screen share of this software and kind of jump into what I mean about velocities. What are some of the things that you should be looking at when you're actually looking at your data, right? So this is our test account. And so you need to just basically, the first thing to do is to decide, you know, your velocity. There's a couple of different ways to look at velocity. So you can look at averages, right? Some people do 30-day average. Some people look at a combination of 30-day, 15-day, 7-day averages. And so the idea is to figure out what data you want to be using to calculate your average sales data, and go with that, right? You can also do manual overrides. You can look at last year's sales. And so a lot of the time what we see is sellers will use their past, you know, days data, right? Their 30-day or 60-day data for the majority of time. But when it comes to their high seasons, right? If it's a summer product, maybe like a barbecue product, they'll do it in the summer. Or if it's, you know, really big seller at Christmas, they'll look at last year's data. So, you know, you just have to decide based on what your business is, what's the most important data to use? Is the most important data to use last year's data, or is the most important data to use, you know, the last, say, 30 days or 60 days worth of data? Very important to understand when you're using last year's data, however. We can usually remember things that happened 30 days ago, maybe 60 days ago, but, you know, and then we can kind of adjust for that. But when we're trying to use last year's data, that's when errors can occur. And you can, you know, trust me on this, because I had made errors that had really caused me to actually over order. You can over order or you can under order. if your data is bad. And your data can be bad if you have sales spikes that are occurring that you don't remember and don't filter out. So one year during the Christmas season, I had a product mentioned on television and had a huge sales day. I think it was like a $40,000, in sales on this one product over one day. And then when I did my calculation the next year, I didn't think about it. I didn't tag, it. And I said, okay, here's the order. And I took last year's sales data and I ordered that. Well, you can't, unless you're planning on being on TV again, you can't really plan for that. So you need the ability to remove sales spikes. So that's one of the things that we do is we flag anything that's 150% of your average daily sales, right? So this is harder to do on Excel and harder to do when you don't have the granular data. The thing that you need to kind of be able to do is to mark that down and make those notes. If you're using Excel, make those notes in a spreadsheet or something, that you want to eliminate that from your calculation, right? So, say we were selling 10 a day and all of a sudden we sold 40 in one day. Well, that's going to be removed. And all of this is flexible. You can decide to include it or exclude it. But that's really important because that causes you to overorder. And we're talking about excess inventory. So if you're not factoring sales spikes out, then you can get into excess inventory, similar to stockouts. You can underorder because you're not factoring stockouts out of your calculation, right? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this. Let's go back to here. All right, okay, so now as we're talking about restricting things, right, and we're talking about that you've got these limits, one of the things that you can do is called min-max restocking. And this was an idea that came about from, I actually visited a manufacturing facility that warehoused a lot of book stocks. And they had instituted for everything, they printed books. And so they had ink, they had paper, they had all of these things, and they had a minimum and a maximum. And so whenever they got to the minimum, they set, and it's not zero, it's usually a buffer. It's a safety stock that says, I don't ever want to get lower than, 10 days worth of sales or 100 units. And then you have a maximum saying, I don't want to go any higher than 500 units. So if you have those restrictions, and you can actually download a report that will tell you what your restrictions are. So if you don't know this, if you go under inventory, go under the reports, and I believe it's fulfillment reports under the inventory section, restocking, it's a restocking report. So download the restocking report and it will tell you all of your restrictions on every single SKU. So what you can then do is you're always stocking up to the top of what you're allowed to send in, and you're going down to your minimum, which is whatever you set for it. Maybe it's 100 units, and then restocking up to that top, and you're constantly staying within this range, and you're topping off, and then you're going down. And so this minimum and maximum, setting it up for your orders and also your transfers will allow you to create some prediction, so you're not guessing all the time. You create rules. And this also is a way that you can start getting some of these things off of your plate. If you're a solopreneur or you're a small operation and you think that it's very difficult to get these things off of and give them to somebody else to do, like a VA, it's kind of like McDonald's. McDonald's has a system for everything. So if you adopt a min-max restocking system, you create some guidelines for these things, you might have to put the marketing plan into the inventory planning, right? And you do the marketing planning. But once that marketing planning is inside of your inventory plan, then you just set a minimum and a maximum, and you say, I always want 90 days worth of stock. So whatever 90 days is based on, what we've decided, that's what we want to use, right? So let me show you a little bit of how that would work. So let's just do another screen share. All right, so, you have an order schedule, right? And you can set, you know, every week, but as needed. This is where the orders kind of come into place. You have, you know, your buffer stock, you know, say 10 days is no lower than 10 days at Amazon, no lower than 20 days at your warehouse, for a total of 30 days. Always have 30 days in stock, whatever your guidelines are. And then you can have your maximum. You always want 45 days perhaps at FBA, and you always want 45 days at your warehouse. And so the calculation is always going to use that data. So it's always going to tell you to transfer so that you top off at that 45 days. And it's always going to work to keep at least 20 days of stock in your warehouse. And then when you're running out, it's going to tell you to transfer, right? And so it's always going to use those guidelines to figure out what you need to transfer and what you need to order. So it becomes a lot simpler to figure these things out. All right, I think we've got a couple of questions. I'm just gonna kind of peek at them and see the relevance of them. Let's see. So FBM kicks in if FBA stocks out. FBM listing is also 10% higher in price, which helps to offset expenses. Yes, so that's the other thing that you can do is you know, it's a very, very good way to handle things is to have FBA and FBM listings at once. It kind of supports the idea around having this backup plan, having another distribution plan, and outside of your FBA inventory, right? Yes, okay, someone says, please give the names of the 3PLs. Yeah, so I'm gonna list those at the end. And then a suggestion made by Jerry says, maintain a holiday season diary. Keep a record of all activities, promotions, odd situations. Yes, it's very important. Something that my friends and I call a changes log. A changes log is extremely important for your entire business. So anything that you do, you know, if you change the bullet points, if you change, you know, your advertising, that way you can trace back and then pay attention to what your conversion rates are, what your traffic is, keeping track of that. So, you know, that would kind of fall right in line with that, is always keeping track of these various things so that you can very easily kind of point back to the cause and effect. Because if you're not, you know, if you don't know the cause and effects in your business, then you're going to have a really difficult time recreating successes or avoiding, you know, problems. So thank you for that. Sell-through. Okay, sell-through. So that's basically how it's turnover. You put in 1,000 units, how long until that 1,000 units actually get sold, right? So Amazon wants to see that you're actually turning product. They don't want to see 1,000 units show up and 2 years later it's still in their warehouse. They really, really don't like that. So that kind of, you know, supports having a third-party fulfillment center, but also supports, you know, there's some things you can do. You can increase your sales, and that's one of the things they encourage you to do actually, is to do a sale, right? So, but you have to be careful of that. You know, they recommend, oh, you know, lower your price, and then, you know, on one of my products I lowered my price, and they ended up like suspending it for pricing errors. So keep an eye on it. If you do these things, you know, that they recommend, you know, keep an eye on what actually happens to it. Okay, so yes, increasing sales through traffic and conversion improvements. So things like PPC, things like listing improvements, you know, sales, doing coupon code emails to your list, all of these things that can help improve sales, to help improve sell-through, right? Also, when you're improving sales on a product, it's going to increase the limits. So if you're trying to get your limit up on a product, it might make sense to start to run some sales, because that will help to increase your limits, right? I believe it was Helium 10 that did a study recently on launching a product with these new restrictions. They were allowed to send in 200 units. The new product limit is 200 units. Sent in 200 units, and then we're slowly tracking over time how quickly they could get their limit increased, right? And it turned out, I think it was something like 18 days, and they doubled their limit. So pretty cool study. So yeah, so if you're really frustrated with one of your main products not selling well, you might, or not having good limits, you might try increasing the sales, right? But that again is, you know, also we're going back to sell-through rate. It's a very good thing to have that for sell-through rate, is to put into your weekly or your monthly plan, how can we move these slow moving products? How can we, you know, increase this sell-through rate, right? Sales, you know, increasing sales, you know, traffic conversion, things like that. All right, and then the second one is just stop sending in too much inventory, right? We'll go back to, you know, min-max restocking and the 3PL, right? So those are some of the things that you can do to avoid, you know, your sell-through rate being so poor. If you've got an MOQ and you have to order 1,000 units, but it takes 3 months to sell them, then just keep, you know, 3 months, keep 2 months worth of inventory at your 3PL and send in monthly to Amazon, for example, right? And so if you haven't seen the scorecard, it'll list out the areas that you need work on. So, you know, if you are doing well in any specific area, you know, maybe you can work to improve it, you know, but, you know, don't do things that are very rash and don't make sense for your business if that specific area isn't the area that's really pulling down your score. All right, so we talked about velocities. You know, this also ties back to velocities. So sell-through rate has to do with velocities. You know, if you are working on bad data, you could send in too much inventory to Amazon. You know, make sure that your sales spikes are being factored out of your equation. We talked about min and max transfers, right? Or we talked about min and max. Min and max transfers would be the same thing as setting that range and transferring from your warehouse to Amazon on a consistent basis, right? And then of course, warehousing, making sure that you have a warehouse, and I will share that, you know, that list at the end. All right, in stock inventory. So wants to make sure that you're actually keeping your inventory in stock, and it kind of ties, you know, ties back to stocking out, right? If you're consistently stocking out, then there's an issue. So your in-stock inventory rate is going to be affected. So let's talk about how the FBA in-stock rate is calculated. It looks a little bit complicated, so I had to really kind of dig in, but they actually do a good job of explaining this. So the in-stock rate, what they do is they take the percentage of the past 30 days that your SKU was in stock, and then they take your 60-day velocity, right? So if you're in stock for, you know, 45, they have 60 days up here, 45 of the last 60 days, and then you sold 90, they're going to take 90, the 90 units you sold, divide it by 45, the number of days you were in stock, and then you get the number 2, right? You sold 2 per day. And so the percentage of past in-stock days for the past 30 days was 50%. And then the same thing goes with this one, you were in stock 100% of the time. So what then ends up happening is they add those percentages together, and then they have, you know, 2 units at 50% plus 3 units at 100%, and then they'll divide that by 5 units and you get 80%. So they then say you were in stock 80% of the time. All right, so, you know, the idea is that, all right, let's go back. I wanted to get into this a little bit. We want to understand there's sometimes this thought that if I'm not going to replenish something, then I should just turn it off, and that's going to help to improve my in-stock rate, right? That's not always the case. So you have to be very careful with marking something as non-replenishable, because you can mark things as non-replenishable, and then they're going to remove it from your in-stock calculation. That could be a very good thing, but it could be a very bad thing. So I'll jump on over to Amazon themselves and show what they are saying, and I'll include a link to this as well. I'm going to grab the link and include the link as well. So here's the important thing that they say. about hiding a replenishable item, right? So if we look at this example above, if we were to hide SKU number 1, which we were out of stock 50%, our in-stock rate would go up to 100%, which is a good thing, right? But if we were to hide SKU number 2, then our in-stock rate would go from this 80% to 50%. That's a bad thing. So when you're trying to decide what items to hide or not hide, to try to improve your in-stock rate in your score, you have to, just do the math, right? The math is laid out here. So you can just do the math and decide, is this something that will hurt my score or will not hurt my score, right? And you may have a lot of SKUs, so it might be a little bit of a hurdle, but just keep in mind that it's a double-edged sword. This thing of marking an item as not replenishable, and you automatically would want to assume that anything you mark as non-replenishable is going to positively affect your score, right? And that's not necessarily the case, but keep an eye on it, because as you continue to be out of stock in that product, that continues to be, give you poor results, and that percentage of out of stock in the last 30 days increases. But if it's a very slow mover, that's not going to have a huge impact. If you're in stock, or if your velocity was calculated at one sale per day, where you have 100 sales per day in another product, that's going to be a very low impact. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, now I know we have another question here. I want to make sure. Is it possible to connect 3PLs with SoStocked so that it deducts the units in a 3PL once the transfer is complete? So we don't connect with 3PLs yet, but we do keep track. Whenever you have, we see what you're sending to Amazon because we're connected to the API, and whatever your inventory is pulling from, or whatever we're seeing coming from your warehouse to Amazon can be deducted from your warehouse. So we'll keep a tab. I think it's actually very important to, on this topic, if you're going to be getting into using 3PLs, it's very important to actually understand and keep track of your own inventory, because otherwise you're relying on another company that doesn't have as much of a vested interest in accuracy to keep track of things, and things have and can go missing, right? I had inventory for a particular product that I had hundreds of units, almost 1,000 units that were not showing up on my inventory report that I was being sent by my warehouse. But since I was keeping track of it in SoStocked, I knew I had this inventory. And so, I asked them, and finally, miraculously, it showed up on the report. They finally found it. And so it's important for you to keep track just as they're keeping track, and kind of, it's kind of like auditing. You're auditing them. You're making sure that what you say you have is actually what you have. And then you can trace back, well, if they don't have the same thing, what happened? Did the supplier not send it? And you can kind of start to keep track, did this amount arrive? Okay, now I know exactly what we have, right? I had 42 cartons, we're supposed to show up. I only had 40 being reported. Got from our freight forwarder that two of them were still on the way. So you have to follow up on those things. So that's very important to understand, that mistakes can be made. And we had our supply chain manager consistently correcting the invoices that were sent from freight forwarders and warehouses and things like that. So, don't just take their word for it. It's important to kind of start to understand a little bit more about how these things work. All right. So what can we expect in terms of quantity limits? So again, there is a report that you can download, right? It's going to tell you exactly what you're able to send in. It's the restock report, right? Under the report section, under fulfillment, under inventory. And according to Amazon, right, they're going to be looking at 3 months worth of inventory, right? And they're going to say you can send in 3 months worth of inventory. We're not always finding this to be the case. And when they put their restrictions on items during COVID, one of the things I personally noticed was that they were not taking stockouts into account when they were making recommendations for things that they were restricting, at least on my account. I was being told to send in much less, you know, of an item that had a very limited stock out based on them not checking something in for long periods of time. So you have to kind of pay attention to that. If you don't have a lot of history, if you have no sales history, you're going to be limited to 200 units is what we're finding. And the other thing to factor that I've learned just from talking to various different users, SoStocked users, is they're also limiting space. So if you have a very large product, and I would be interested to find, you know, list in the chat if you have oversized products, because we're finding that oversized products are being very heavily, like your score is very, very heavily affected by oversized products. I'm in a mastermind group, 82 people were surveyed, and the biggest deciding factor on poor scores were oversized. So it's kind of unfair, but you know, there's an unfair disadvantage for people who sell overstock products. So you'll also get size limits. So even if it says you can send in 200 units, you might find that you have a size limit that does not allow you to meet the unit limit. So that's kind of a strange thing. It gets to be really difficult and complicated when you get into size limits. So, you know, that's something to kind of keep in mind. If you're wondering why, you know, you're limited so strictly, it might be because you're oversized. All right, so let's see. So for goodness sakes, you know, stop stocking out. That's kind of one of the biggest things, I think, beyond the size is, you know, don't stock out. Amazon, you know, kind of created the perfect storm for us in they pretty much created stockouts due to the COVID restrictions. And then they, you know, basically, and as well as, you know, all of the delays from manufacturing, right? And the shipping delays and all of these things. But that kind of goes to say it's, you know, it's a good idea to have a little bit of a buffer, increase all of your lead times, increase, you know, your orders. So you have a little bit of a buffer, a little more buffer than you normally would have. You know, as soon as all this stuff started happening, I lengthened out my lead times and I increased my buffer stocks, right? Where I used to maybe say I had 15 days that I wanted, you know, and before I started shipping my stuff, or that I wanted to have kept at Amazon, you know, might move it to 30 days, because all of these things that have gone wrong and can go wrong are going to make you want to have more of a cushion, right? More of a cushion in time and more of a cushion in inventory. So all of those things will help you to stay in stock so that you don't, you know, so that you can actually improve your score. And I think it's just very interesting. A lot of us, you know, didn't really pay attention to the score. And now that it's affecting us, we start to look at that we actually have to, on a weekly basis, you know, on a weekly basis, going over your inventory, getting that system in, even if you're not doing anything, you're just checking and you're making sure you have enough and you're making sure, you know, all of these points are in. Because if you don't put it on your schedule, don't put it on your calendar, don't make it a weekly appointment, what's going to happen is that you stop doing it for 3 weeks and then you remember to come back and do it and you realize you should have ordered a week and a half ago, and then you're running behind. So that's one big thing that I see. Probably the biggest trend with sellers is this shooting from the hip inventory management, not really having a plan, you know, consistently. And I have a different, you know, topic that I talk about, which I'm going to be actually talking to, I'll tell you about this later, Mike Zagari from PPC Entourage. He and I are going to be talking about inventory management and sponsored ads and how to increase profitability and cash flow, you know, by properly planning sponsored ads and, you know, and having that conversation around marketing and inventory and how it works together. Okay, so yeah, so essentially, you know, with this, which we were, you know, kind of talking about, velocity is important for your in-stock rate. The stockouts is important to consider. We talked about, you know, being able to identify when your stockouts are occurring. Buffer stock, safety stock, and then building your marketing system in. You don't know how many people have told me that they canceled lightning deals, or I've talked to a lot of sponsored ad companies that essentially say, you know, you know, I kind of straight up asked him, I have a friend of mine, I won't say, runs a sponsored ads agency. And I asked him, you know, have you ever stocked out a client? Oh yeah, all the time. Marketing people, you know, that you're paying, agencies that you pay, don't look at inventory when they turn your ads on. That's just, it's kind of maddening. But if you're going to run a stock, you don't want to pay to do it. You don't want to pay ad spend, you know, to Amazon to stock out. It hurts your score and it hurts your profit, and, you know, and it hurts your cash flow. So building your marketing plan also, if it's Mother's Day and you run a 20% discount coupon to your email list, and then you stock out the next month, what was the point? You gave away 20% discount when you could have made full price sales and avoided running out of stock. So putting your marketing systems into your inventory systems is very, very important additional piece to all that we're talking about. And that's a completely different conversation. That's one of the reasons we built marketing tools, marketing into SoStocked. It's tools that help to show when marketing events are occurring and to help to calculate and add additional units for these times. So a lot of the time we do additional marketing planning during the holidays, but we don't do it for Mother's Day or Father's Day or Valentine's Day. And all of these days that we tend to then on a whim start to, you know, send, you know, coupons out and things like that. We have to factor those things in as well. All right, have a backup plan. So again, don't let Amazon be your only distribution channel, right? At least know of a company that can service you. And so I'm gonna right now take the time to just kind of give you in the chat the names of some of these companies. One of the companies I use is Air Group. They are a shipping company. I also recommend Amazing Logistics and Viable Shipping. Remember, ask for their data, and Zebra Pals. Some of these guys do fulfillment, some of them don't. Air Group is primarily a shipping company, so they may not do warehousing to someone who doesn't use them as a shipper. Okay. So those you should be able to find all of these if you search their names online, and you know, yeah, just ask for their rates. Let's see. For SKUs not currently being stocked but will be stocked again in the future, how does close the listing impact the inventory score? Will closing help? I'm not exactly sure. I've heard that it doesn't, that it may not necessarily help, but I can't say, you know, say with certainty what is going to happen with that. So if someone else can, you know, give us an idea in the chat, if you have an answer to this idea of what will happen if you close the listing, will that impact the score? You know, I've heard mixed things about it. All right. I want to make sure that we've got this question here. Okay, so even if it's Amazon's your only sales channel, should not be your only distribution channel. Kind of wanted to, I think that this year is the year that everyone's discovering that. I think that, oh, that's one more thing. For your third-party warehouses that are also doing fulfillment, one of the problems that was happening with some of our users is that they had cartons they were trying to get shipped into Amazon for FBA, but their stuff was continually being pushed back simply because the company was so busy with fulfillment. So they might not be at capacity. You really need to find out if they can actually handle your volume, and it might be a good idea to have two separate. You have your third-party warehouse and you have your fulfillment center, because that's one of the issues is if they are so overwhelmed and if they can't handle that right now, what's going to happen during Christmas? So that can be a big problem. We've got a lot of warehouses now that have so much more business, they might not be able to adapt. So you really need to, when you're having these conversations, see if you can get some references or, you know, get a real idea of how they are actually you know, able to, what are their plans to be able to handle the influx and the growth, and how do they balance their fulfillment and their sending into FBA? Just those two differences. Do they have different teams, or does everyone get pushed over into the fulfillment and your stuff sits? Because it should be able to turn around, you know, immediately, like within a day or two, right? That, you know, is a sign of a good warehouse, is that you send it in and it gets there, right? All the more reason to have buffer stock as well. So we talked about create a distribution channel. I think we talked about this. Yeah, so Amazon is changing their policies. They're suddenly and all the time, it seems. So don't rely on Amazon, you know, to consistently throw you these curveballs. You know, it just gives you more power. I think, you know, having a third-party warehouse, it just gives you more power. Having a potential backup distribution with a fulfillment center gives you more power. Even if, you know, they're your only sales channel, you need to have a little bit of control so that you're not so gutted when these things happen. All right, so good inventory management solution should look at sales spikes, stock outs, start factoring in marketing like lightning deals, projecting seasonality. It should track all of your orders and transfers. So, you know, if you're looking for, you know, some sort of a solution, or you're looking to set up a system, these are all things that you need to kind of keep in mind. You know, tracking your orders and tracking all of your transfers. Where are my things at? Where are things at? You know, are they actually going to arrive on time? Getting reorder alerts set up, and then managing your FBA, your 3PL, and your inventory on order, right? What is inbound? All right, so my company again is SoStocked, forecasting, order tracking. We also do PO creation and full inventory management. So you saw a little bit of how the software works. We have a couple of people that have said things, you know, really good things about us. You know, used to take ridiculous amounts of time using Excel spreadsheets. Can't recommend SoStocked enough. Real-time visibility, minimizing stockouts and forecasting demand, which helped me with cash flow management, no more expensive air shipments. We actually had someone who said that their score, been with us since pretty much the beginning, so for a whole year has been using SoStocked, said his score is at 762 now, which he attributes to having SoStocked set up. So, you know, having that visibility really makes it's really important. But then also you have to use a tool. If you have a tool, you have to use it, and you have to use it consistently. Set an appointment with yourself on a weekly basis, even if nothing is really happening except for that you're checking up on orders, right? And then, so someone else who was in our beta said, this tool is unbelievable. I can't say enough good things about this tool. It's a must have. This is someone that I worked with who I got, he gave me his spreadsheet, and essentially, you know, we used it as part of the basis of reconstructing. We got rid of our algorithm. Algorithms I don't believe in them. I don't think they work very well. And they're usually a secret. And, you know, and essentially we put together something that, you know, you can do in Excel, but, you know, it's granular, or it's automatic. It's, you know, it just gets rid of a lot of the time that is usually involved. Okay, so I have an offer for you guys. I don't offer this to people outside. Like if you've ever seen my website, you've seen that we don't do free trials. And the reason that we don't do free trials is because we essentially could not handle all of the influx. We do a lot of one-on-one work with people. But I am offering it just to this group on the webinar, just a webinar only, because it's a smaller group than, you know, the entire internet. So what it is it's essentially, it's a free 1-month trial. So you can try it out, see how it works, see if you like it. And after that, after that, it's a lifetime price of $59. It doesn't go up when you add more SKUs. It doesn't go up when your orders increase. It doesn't go up when we add more features. Later on, we're going to have tiered pricing, but right now you can lock in a lifetime price at $59, right? I'll do a one-on-one inventory management coaching session with you. So I do that with our users, is an inventory management coaching. I can look at, you know, I can look at whatever you want me to look at, help you to get into the system, figure out how to put your system together. And we'll even do free migration. So if you're on another platform or you have a bunch of spreadsheets, you have a bunch of POs that are currently in process. Also, if you have, if you can send us your restock report, you send your restock report to us, we can put all of those max stocks into your system so that your transferring is set up properly to be able to only send in what you need. I also mentioned I'm a copywriting expert. I have a masterclass that you'll also get if you sign up for the free trial. That's yours to keep. You know, even if you decide that the software is not for you, you don't want it, you're not really feeling it. First of all, you know, ask me. I'm happy to help you before you make that decision. But the masterclass you get to keep, right? The other thing that you have is Thomason. My business partner created Thomason. It's an influencer brand connector. So it will help to connect you with influencers who can then blog about or, you know, film video about your product to help to get more influencer attention onto your particular product or your particular brand. Free 2-month trial of the unlimited access account. So all of that is part of this free offer. This is the link that you see above. I'll also put it down into, let's see, I'll also put it down into the chat so you can have like a quick link. And this is going to be up until the end of the weekend. So this will be up until Sunday. So if you do need to think about it, it'll be available till Sunday. I will email the link out to you as well. But, you know, if you have any questions, you can, you know, let me know. Again, the first month is free. Give it a try. May give you some ideas, even if it's not something that you want, you know, if you don't want to keep it, may give you some ideas about, you know, how we have constructed the system, may give you some ideas about how, you know, you want to kind of run your inventory. Oh, Victor said he never got the class. Okay, I'm gonna send me an email and I'll get that out to you, Victor. Yeah. All right. Okay, so that's it. That's what I had to say. That's what I wanted to share with you. Again, I have another webinar that is occurring. Oh, I think we have a quick question. Oh, I already answered that one. I have another webinar that is occurring next week that I mentioned earlier. Mike Zagari, a good friend of mine, runs PPC Entourage. It's a sponsored ads or PPC software. He also runs an agency. So he runs an agency, lives, breathes, sleeps PPC. He's a seller himself. And we're going to be talking about PPC profitability and staying in stock as you scale, right? One of the things that he has in terms of his PPC is something called margins, and that helps to keep track of your margins to make sure that, you know, as you are doing all these ads, you're actually making money. Because a lot of the time when people start out in their businesses, they make a bunch of sales and then they wonder, you know, why it just feels like they're churning dollars, because usually they are. So we want to talk about that, and I want to talk about how to stay in stock and how to do your inventory planning while you're doing your sponsored ad planning, because that has a lot to do with profitability too. If you're spending a bunch of money on ads, you know, and then you run out of stock, you know, how profitable were you actually? So, yeah, so that's, you know, that's on September 3rd. It's SoStocked.com/seller secrets. I'll put a quick link to that as well in the chat. Sorry, just grabbing the link. And then let me know if you have any questions. If you think of a question later on, send us an email at stock@sostocked.com. But that's all I have. I guess you know, if there's no more questions, then I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day and weekend, and hope to have you on our next call when we talk to Mike Zagari. All right, that's Frank. Thank you so much, guys.